Welcome back to the crypto channel, everyone. My name is Josh, and right now the Bitcoin price is slowly building up to an extremely volatile move, according to the massive squeeze in this Bollinger Bands indicator. And on top of that, Ethereum has now confirmed this new bullish divergence, which I'll be talking about later in this video, alongside multiple other charts. Definitely watch to the end of the video so that you're not missing out on any of this important information. Just starting off on the 4-hour Bitcoin chart, and obviously over the past one day, we haven't seen a lot happen in the price of Bitcoin and Ethereum, which is why I'm just making the one video today. But anyway, as for levels of support and resistance, we still have strong support at around 28,500 and strong resistance at around 30.7k. And we also have another level of resistance to pay attention to, which is to do with this descending triangle pattern on this 4-hour Bitcoin chart. And this line of resistance is coming into play at just below 30,000, more specifically at around 29.7k approximately. And so in order for the Bitcoin price to finally break out of this price range that we've been in over the past few weeks, we'd first need to see a breakout above this descending line of resistance just below 30,000 once again, and then we'll need to see a confirmed breakout above 30.7k in order to see any further bullish reversal in the price of Bitcoin. And obviously at the time of recording this video, we have not broken resistance or support. We are simply still forming this descending triangle pattern, which is technically a bearish pattern because the structure of this pattern obviously shows increased selling pressure and stagnant buying pressure. And statistically speaking, a descending triangle pattern is more likely to break to the downside, but it's still not impossible for it to break to the upside, if that makes sense. And the line of support for this descending triangle pattern is obviously coming in at this line of support, coming into play at around 28,500. And as I've mentioned in previous Bitcoin update videos, if we do end up breaking that level, then the chances of us revisiting the 25k low would be significantly increased. But even if the Bitcoin price breaks below 28k and heads back towards that low that we set a couple weeks ago at around 25k, that would not be the end of the world, because we actually saw that sort of price action multiple times throughout the middle of last year. For example, we have this possible fractal to pay attention to, which I did talk more about in yesterday's Bitcoin update video, so I'm not going to go too much into detail about this right here. But anyway, if you're looking at the white bars, that is the price action that we saw around the middle of last year when we saw the massive Bitcoin crash during May last year, and then a lot of consolidation during around June and July. And if you're looking at last year's price action in the white bars, once again, we actually revisited the previous low, the initial low, around 2 other times before then we finally bottomed out, which basically means even if the Bitcoin price goes back towards 25k, that would not be the end of the world once again, because we have seen that sort of price action play out multiple times in the past. And now if you're looking at the Bollinger Bands indicator on the daily Bitcoin chart, right now they are having a massive squeeze, which basically means the Bitcoin price is building up to another very volatile move. If you're simply looking at the last time we saw a squeeze in these Bollinger Bands, that was right back here when we saw a lot of somewhat neutral price action for Bitcoin, not a lot of downside or upside price action. And then we saw a squeeze in this indicator, and then we had an extremely volatile move to the downside. And if you're looking at what happened in the middle of last year, this is looking in July last year, basically we saw a squeeze in these Bollinger Bands indicator, and within about 1 to 2 weeks later, we saw an extremely volatile move to the upside. And looking back at some Bitcoin price action that we saw in the second half of 2020, during July 2020, we saw a massive squeeze in this Bollinger Bands indicator. And then just around the corner was an extremely volatile move in the Bitcoin price, which obviously was to the upside at that stage. And we saw something similar during around October 2020. Once again, a massive squeeze in the Bollinger Bands indicator, which means the Bitcoin price was building up for an extremely volatile move. So the question now is, when will we see that extremely volatile move, and what direction will the Bitcoin price be heading in? And now obviously there's never any 100% guarantees in these markets. So all we can do is talk about the most likely scenario moving forward based on multiple data points like patterns, indicators, signals, and what other markets are doing, like the stock markets, for example. And so to answer the first part of the question, when will we see that volatile move? It would most likely happen next month, so in June. Now, obviously a 1 month window is a pretty big window, but as we try and narrow that down, we become less and less accurate, technically speaking. And if you're wondering why I'm saying next month, so sometime during June, definitely check out my last Bitcoin update video that I posted on the channel. And then as for the direction of the move, that would mostly depend on what the stock market is doing. So for example, over the past 1 week or so, we've actually seen a decent bounce in the stock markets. And so if this bounce continues into a bit more of a bullish reversal, reversal, then it's simply more likely in that scenario for that extremely volatile move to be to the upside for the Bitcoin price. But on the flip side, if the stock market immediately reverses next week, something like this, for example, and we just continue dumping into new lower lows, then it's more likely in that case that the next volatile move could be to the downside. And in that scenario, I'll be targeting potentially around $22,000 to $23,000 per Bitcoin based on what I said in yesterday's Bitcoin update video. But as of right now, simply based on the charts as they are, and also based on the fact that we're seeing extreme levels of fear, personally, I am leaning slightly more bullish than bearish at the moment. But once again, if we see another rollover in the stock market, that could change the situation. But looking at the 2-day Bitcoin chart, we still have an active bullish divergence in play, which basically means we're due to see reduced bearish momentum, which has already been playing out over the past couple of weeks. Obviously, we haven't seen any significant dump in the Bitcoin price since we saw that low at around 25K. And if you zoom out to the weekly Bitcoin chart, taking a look at the 1000-day moving average coming in at just above 28K and the 200-week moving average coming in at just above 22K, this gives us an accumulation price range because historically speaking, every single time where the Bitcoin price has entered in between these two moving averages, that has turned out to be an amazing Bitcoin buying opportunity time and time again throughout many years worth of Bitcoin's history. And to further confirm the best Bitcoin buying opportunities, we can look at the weekly Bitcoin RSI, which in two cases just here at the end of 2014 and the end of 2018 entered into oversold territories. And in the March 2020 crash, we saw the weekly Bitcoin RSI get very close to oversold territories, but it didn't quite make it all the way there. And right now, at the time of recording this video, the weekly Bitcoin RSI is very close to oversold territories. In fact, we're sitting at around the same sort of values as what the weekly RSI was sitting at the bottom of the March 2020 crash. And as I said earlier, if we do end up playing out that volatile move to the downside due to these Bollinger Bands squeezing, then I'll be targeting at least 25K, basically a revisit of that initial low that we saw a couple weeks ago, but potentially as low as around 22 to 23,000 based on the 200-week moving average, where historically speaking has shown us the Bitcoin bottom time and time again. And while we're on the weekly Bitcoin chart, quickly taking a look at the weekly volume for Bitcoin, which I talked more about in yesterday's Bitcoin update video, but basically anytime we see a significant spike in volume while we're seeing a Bitcoin crash, that usually means we're either very close to the bottom or we've hit the bottom for the Bitcoin price. But once again, if you want to know more about this chart right here, definitely check out my last Bitcoin update video that I posted yesterday on the channel. And now heading into the Ethereum part of this video, this right here is the daily Ethereum to US dollar chart, and we have just confirmed another bullish divergence here because obviously we have lower lows in the Ethereum daily candle closes for the price action, but we have higher lows in the daily RSI. And due to the fact that we saw yesterday's daily candle close in the green, that confirmed a low in the RSI, which is what we needed to actually confirm this bullish divergence. And so technically speaking, this bullish divergence means that we're due to see reduced bearish momentum in the shorter term at least, which basically means most likely more sideways choppy price action and potentially a bit of a bounce, but we'll see because we still have a lot of resistance ahead of us. And this, by the way, is the 4-hour Ethereum chart, and we have previous support which is flipped into new resistance coming into play at around 1,900. And then anything above that, I'll be looking towards around 2,065 and around 2,150. But when it comes to Ethereum against the US dollar, there's not much else to cover because Ethereum normally follows what Bitcoin is doing against the US dollar, which is why the Ethereum versus Bitcoin chart becomes very important, especially during this stage in the market, because we have already seen a break to the downside from this massive uptrend that we've seen over the past 1 year or so. And so technically speaking, the larger trend here for Ethereum versus Bitcoin is a downtrend, which means Ethereum is underperforming against Bitcoin in this larger multi-month trend. But obviously in the short term, we're still playing out a bit of a bounce as I talked about 2 days ago, because if you're looking at the 3-day RSI for Ethereum versus Bitcoin, we've seen multiple bounces along this descending line of support. And looking at the previous 3 times that has happened over the past 1 year, that has resulted in at least a short-term bounce for Ethereum versus Bitcoin. But considering the bearish nature of the market that we're in at the moment, we would most likely see something like what we saw in January this year, because obviously at the beginning of this year, the crypto market was still in a very bearish stage in the market. And so we saw Ethereum versus Bitcoin play out a short-term bounce, but not really a full-on bullish reversal. So I wouldn't be expecting too much of a bounce here before then we eventually roll over. Because remember, this isn't Ethereum against the US dollar, this is Ethereum against Bitcoin. So even if we do see some more bearish price action for Ethereum versus Bitcoin, that doesn't necessarily mean Ethereum is bearish against the US dollar. That just means Ethereum would be underperforming against Bitcoin. And if you zoom out to the weekly time frame, one of the main reasons why I do expect Ethereum versus Bitcoin to trend lower potentially over the next coming months is simply based on what we saw in the last bear cycle back in 2018. This right here was the 2018 bear market, and at this stage right here at the end of 2018, Ethereum bottomed out against Bitcoin in the short term, but obviously Ethereum still had another half a year approximately worth of downside price action against Bitcoin. But keep in mind that was not against the US dollar, because during the first half of 2019 Ethereum was actually bullish against the US dollar. So Ethereum against the US dollar did actually bottom out at the end of the 2018 bear market right around here, and the reason why Ethereum against Bitcoin went lower even after the end of the 2018 bear market was simply because of the fact that Bitcoin continued to outperform Ethereum in the next bullish recovery. And that's usually what we see. We don't actually see altcoin seasons until after we see a bullish Bitcoin move, and then Bitcoin begins to stabilize, and that is the time when we see an altcoin season after we see a bullish Bitcoin move, which is one of the main reasons why my personal crypto investing strategy is to right now accumulate more Bitcoin than any other altcoin, Ethereum included. And yes, I am lightly dollar cost averaging into Ethereum against the US dollar, but those Ethereum purchases I've been making are nowhere near my Bitcoin purchases. And in fact, nearly 1 week ago, I did move some of my Ethereum into Bitcoin to simply hedge myself from this potential bearish scenario from playing out. And once again, I'm extremely light on altcoins. I'm definitely not heavy into altcoins, and I'm not doing any heavy accumulation into altcoins, at least just yet, also due to the Bitcoin dominance, which is still in a strong uptrend. And while this is happening, this is not good for the altcoin market, but this is good for Bitcoin against the rest of the crypto market. And then of course, an altcoin season is something like this, where we see a major downtrend in the Bitcoin dominance. And that usually happens after we see a massive bullish run in the Bitcoin price, which obviously we haven't really seen just yet. But in the immediate short term, speaking about the last couple of days, we have seen a slight recovery in some altcoin prices due to the fact that the Bitcoin dominance has gotten a slight rejection from this previous high, sitting at around 47% dominance. But at the time of recording this video, this is not a confirmed bearish reversal, at least just yet, which means technically speaking, the trend does show Bitcoin is doing better than altcoins, which is why I'm simply heavier into Bitcoin than altcoins. But obviously that is not financial advice. I'm just simply telling you my personal crypto investing strategy based on all of this information. And make sure to check out one of these videos popping up right here on your screen if you want to know how to make more money in crypto even if prices are going down. But anyway, that is everything that I have to say for today. I really hope you enjoyed, and I'll see you all in the next video.